In 1610, a man died alone on a beach in Tuscany. No one is entirely sure how. Fever, perhaps. Or murder. His enemies had been hunting him for years. He was a convicted killer. A brawler. A man who had stabbed someone to death over a disputed tennis match, then spent his final years running from a death sentence. And yet, this same man invented a way of painting that would haunt European art for the next 2 centuries. He didn't paint people so much as drag them out of the dark, just enough light to see a hand, a blade, a face frozen mid-thought, and left the rest to disappear into black. His name was Michelangelo Merisi. History remembers him by the name of the town he came from, Caravaggio. This is the story of the shadow he cast, and the small army of painters across Europe who chased it. Before we go further, 3 words you'll hear a lot in this video, and they are not interchangeable. Chiaroscuro, from the Italian for light-dark, simply means the use of strong contrasts between light and shadow to model form. Painters had used it for over a century before Caravaggio. Leonardo used it. Titian used it. Tenebrism, from tenebroso, murky or dark, is something more extreme. Instead of a gradual blend, tenebrism plunges the entire background into total darkness, with only a narrow, almost theatrical beam of light picking out the figures. Backgrounds don't fade, they vanish. And Caravaggism, or Caravaggismo, is the movement, the international wave of painters who adopted this style after seeing his work, whether they ever met the man or not. Keep those 3 in your head. We're about to watch them collide. Caravaggio didn't work like other painters of his generation. Most artists of the late 1500s prepared elaborate drawings, studied idealized anatomy, built up a scene piece by piece on paper first. Caravaggio, as far as historians can tell, painted directly onto the canvas, often straight from live models, sometimes prostitutes, beggars, and street acquaintances from Rome's districts, posed under real, harsh, directional light in his studio. Look at the Calling of St. Matthew, painted around 1599 for the Contarelli Chapel in Rome. A shaft of light cuts diagonally across a dim tavern, landing on the startled face of a tax collector as Christ's hand, barely visible in shadow, points toward him. There's no glowing halo. No golden Renaissance sky. Just a window's worth of light in a dark room, doing all the theological work. Or Judith beheading Holofernes, where the violence isn't softened by beauty. The blood is described with the same unflinching, matter-of-fact light as the folds of the sheets. This was radical. The Catholic Church, in the middle of the Counter-Reformation, wanted religious art that felt immediate, that could grab an illiterate worshipper by the collar and put them inside the biblical scene. Caravaggio's darkness did exactly that. It made sacred stories feel like something happening in the room next door. If you would like to learn how to analyze masterpieces like this, I've put together a completely free PDF guide, the 5-minute art reading checklist by the Blaze Off Art. To get it, just subscribe to the channel and comment the word art below this video, I'll send it your way. It's the exact framework I use to break down every painting on this channel. Alright, back into the video. Caravaggio never ran a workshop. He never took on formal students the way Raphael or Rubens did. And yet his influence spread faster than almost any other painter of his era, because painters from all over Europe traveled to Rome, saw his altarpieces, and left changed. In Rome itself, artists like Bartolomeo Manfredio codified Caravaggio's tavern scenes and dramatic lighting into a repeatable formula, sometimes called Manfrediana Methodus, that other artists could study and copy. Artemisia Gentileschi and later his daughter Artemisia Gentileschi absorbed the Tenebrist style directly. Artemisia's Judith slaying Holofernes pushes the violence and the shadow even further than Caravaggio's own version, a painting that art historians still connect to her own trauma and her determination to paint women as forces, not victims. Travel north, and the influence keeps spreading. In Utrecht, in the Dutch Republic, a group now known as the Utrecht Caravaggisti, including Gerard van Honthorst and Hendrik ter Bruffen, brought Tenebrism to Northern Europe, often replacing sunlight with candlelight as the single dramatic source. That single candle technique would go on to shape the work of a young painter in Amsterdam who never set foot in Italy, Rembrandt van Rijn. His mastery of enveloping darkness, technically closer to chiaroscuro, owes an unmistakable debt to the trail Caravaggio blazed decades earlier. Meanwhile in Naples, Giuseppe de Ribero, a Spanish painter working in a Spanish-controlled city, pushed Tenebrism toward something rawer and more brutal, painting flayed saints and aged philosophers with unsparing, clinical light. And in France, a quieter genius, Georges de la Tour, took the single-candle formula and turned it almost meditative, his figures lit not by drama, but by stillness. None of these painters copied Caravaggio outright. They inherited a problem he had posed: what happens to a story when you remove almost all the light? Here's the part that tends to get missed. Tenebrism wasn't just a lighting trick. It was a philosophy. The Baroque period was obsessed with drama, with movement, with pulling the viewer into an emotional, almost theatrical experience, a direct reaction to the calm, balanced ideals of the Renaissance. And nothing achieves that faster than controlling what the eye is allowed to see. By hiding most of a scene in shadow, these painters weren't being lazy or economical. They were directing attention the way a filmmaker directs a spotlight, deciding, deliberately, what the viewer notices first, and what stays hidden until the eye adjusts. There's also a spiritual reading that art historians return to again and again: light as divine grace breaking into a fallen, sinful world of shadow. A tax collector sitting in the dark until touched by a single beam. A saint's flesh emerging from blackness as if being born into holiness. In an age of religious upheaval, Catholic and Protestant Europe locked in ideological war, that visual metaphor wasn't subtle. It was the entire point. Darkness, in other words, wasn't the absence of the image. It was the image itself. And maybe that's fitting, because Caravaggio's own life resists being fully illuminated. We know he killed a man in 1606 and fled Rome with a bounty on his head. We know he kept painting through his exile, in Naples, in Malta, in Sicily, producing some of his darkest, most turbulent work while running for his life. We know he died in 1610, around age 38, under circumstances still debated by historians: malaria, lead poisoning from his own paints, or an assassin finally catching up with him. He left behind no letters explaining his method. Just the paintings, and the very particular kind of darkness inside them, which hundreds of painters across an entire continent spent the next 100 years trying to understand. Perhaps that's the most honest thing about Tenebrism. It never fully explains itself either. It simply leaves you standing at the edge of the light, straining to see what's just beyond it. Caravaggio spent his life running from the light of the law, while mastering, better than almost anyone before him, how to control it on canvas. 400 years later, we're still standing in the shadow he painted. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. The Blaze of Art is an independent project born in Argentina to rescue and preserve the most fascinating stories in art history. If you wish to support our mission and help us keep creating, please subscribe, follow our social media, support us via PayPal using the links below. Every small contribution keeps this flame alive.